Ever get that, like, that itch, that some things, no matter how much you try to figure them out, they just stay mysteries.
Mm-hmm.
That's what we're diving into today. This is the area of math, and it's called, get this, undecidability.
Okay.
We're talking twin primes. Those numbers, maybe they go on forever. Who knows?
Right.
And then there's this thing, Conway's game of life. It's all about, like, life and death, but on a grid. Super interesting.
Right.
And we can't forget Turing completeness, which seems to be popping up everywhere in tech lately.
Yeah, it's a big one.
Our guide for all this is a blog post, and it's called, let me get it right, Exploring Undecidability. From Game of Life to Turing Machine. Catchy, right?
Definitely.
And it's by this guy, Weicho Sands. He really gets into it, which I appreciate. So, are you ready to, like, question everything you thought you knew?
Always up for a good head scratcher.
Me too. Okay, so twin primes, right? 11 and 13, 29 and 31. They're prime numbers side by side. You'd think there'd be some pattern, some way to predict them, right?
Well, that's the thing. Mathematicians, they've got this hunch, a strong one, that these twin primes, they just keep going forever. But, and here's the kicker, they can't prove it. It's like this puzzle just out of reach.
So math has some mysteries. Got it. But what about something a little more, I don't know, visual? That's where Conway's Game of Life comes in.
Yeah.
Imagine like a grid, right? And each square on the grid, it's either alive or dead.
Okay, I'm picturing it.
And there are these rules. If a dead cell has 3 live neighbors, boom, it comes alive. And a live cell, it survives if it's got 2 or 3 live neighbors. Otherwise, it's curtains, too crowded or too lonely.
Sounds simple enough, but I bet there's a twist.
Oh, there's always a twist.
Yeah.
The wild part is, even with these basic rules, the game of life, it creates these crazy complex patterns. Some, they settle down nice and predictable. Others, they're like stuck in a loop going round and round. And then you've got the patterns that just, they keep growing, like across the grid, and you can't predict what they'll do next.
It's like organized chaos.
That's a good way to put it. So even something as, I don't know, straightforward as a game with a few simple rules.
Can still be unpredictable.
Exactly. Undecidable. Makes you think, huh?
Definitely makes you realize there are things we may never be able to fully predict, no matter how hard we try.
Okay, so how do we even get here? To this whole undecidability thing? Was it like a big aha moment?
Not really. It was more like a journey, a bunch of discoveries, one after another. And it all kind of started back in the late 1800s with this, well, he was brilliant, but maybe a little eccentric, this mathematician named George Cantor. And he was obsessed with infinity. But not just that it existed.
Go on.
He wanted to know, could there be different sizes of infinity?
Whoa, back up. Different sizes of infinity. Now my head's spinning.
Right. Like, think about it. You got 1, 2, 3, keeps going forever, right? That's infinity.
Makes sense.
But then you've got all the numbers in between. Fractions, decimals, irrational numbers, like pi. That's a whole lot bigger infinity, wouldn't you say?
Okay, yeah, I guess so. But how do you even begin to?
Well, that's what Cantor was trying to figure out with set theory, how to organize all this infinity. But it's like he accidentally opened up this Pandora's box.
Pandora's box, huh?
Yeah.
So what kind of trouble did he unleash?
Let's just say he found some serious cracks in, like, the foundation of math itself.
Cracks in the foundation? That doesn't sound good.
Not great, no. You see, his work led to these paradoxes, things that just didn't make sense, logically speaking.
Paradoxes in math. That seems like a problem.
You could say that. And that's where Bertrand Russell comes in, another brilliant guy. And he stumbles upon this particularly nasty paradox. We call it Russell's paradox now. And it really shook things up in the math world.
Okay, I gotta ask. What was this Russell's paradox? Hit me with it.
All right, so imagine a set, any set.
Okay, got it.
Now, this set is defined as the set of all sets that do not contain themselves.
Wait, what?
I know, it's a mouthful. But here's where it gets weird. Does this set contain itself? If it does, well, it shouldn't, because of the definition, right? But if it doesn't contain itself, then it should. It's a total contradiction.
Okay, my brain officially hurts. How did mathematicians deal with this? It's like you're telling me 1 + 1 = potato.
It was a bit of a crisis, you could say. But out of this chaos came, well, a new perspective. And we owe a lot of that to Kurt Gödel.
Okay, never heard of him.
He was this Austrian logician, and in the 1930s, he dropped this major truth bomb on everyone. He called them his incompleteness theorems.
Incompleteness theorems sounds kind of final, like math itself just gave up.
Pretty much. Gödel's theorems, they weren't just about sets anymore. They were about the limits of math itself, what it could and couldn't do.
Okay, now I'm really lost.
So his first theorem basically says, Even in a perfect system of math, one that's solid, follows all the rules, can handle basic arithmetic, even in that, there will always be true statements you can't actually prove within that system.
So even if we know something's true, we might not be able to prove it.
Exactly. It's like there's another room in your house, but you can't find the door to get there.
Whoa, that's trippy.
And it gets weirder. His second incompleteness theorem, it says that no system can prove its own consistency.
Hold on, so we don't even know if our systems are, actually working.
It's like realizing the ground you're standing on might be a little shaky. These theorems, they were huge, not just for math, but for this new field at the time, computer science.
Which brings us to, what was it, the Turing machine, right?
You got it.
I've heard the name, but never really got what it was all about.
So Alan Turing, he was this British mathematician, a total visionary. Back in 1936, he came up with this idea, this theoretical computer. We call it the Turing machine. Now, it's not a real physical computer. It's more like a blueprint, an idea for a machine that could, in theory, compute anything. If you gave it enough time and memory, that is.
So unlimited power, basically.
You could say that. He imagined this machine with an infinitely long tape divided into these little cells.
Infinitely long tape. That doesn't sound very practical.
It's all theoretical, remember? But that's the point. It's about the idea. This machine has a head, and it moves along the tape, reading and writing symbols.
Okay, so it's like writing code.
Kind of. It follows a set of rules. Very precise.
Sounds simple enough, but I have a feeling it's about to get complicated.
Oh, you know it. And this is where we circle back to undecidability.
Okay, I'm listening.
So Turing, he uses this imaginary machine to try and understand the very nature of computation. What can we solve with computers? What's actually computable? And he stumbles on this really interesting problem, totally changes how we think about computers. He called it the halting problem.
Halting problem sounds ominous.
It kind of is, for computers at least. Here's the question. Can you make a program, an algorithm, that could look at any other program and tell you for sure, will it eventually stop running or will it just loop forever?
That's a good question.
Right. If you're a programmer and your code just keeps running, you'd want to know if it'll ever actually stop.
Totally. So what's the answer? Can you make a program like that?
That's the thing. Turing proved that no, you can't. He showed that the halting problem, it's undecidable. There's no program that can answer that question for every single program out there.
So even with, the most powerful computer imaginable, there are still things we can't figure out.
Exactly. There are limits, even in the world of computers.
It makes you think, huh?
It certainly does. And it has huge implications for how we use and think about computers even today.
It's wild, right? We think of computers as these, unstoppable machines. They can solve anything. But then you have the halting problem, and it's like, wait a minute. Even they have limits.
It's a reality check for sure. And it makes you think about, AI, artificial intelligence, all that.
Right.
We're always talking about AI that can do anything, right?
Yeah.
Design the perfect product, write a bestseller, even predict the stock market.
Yeah, like in the movie.
Exactly. But the halting problem, it's a reminder, There are just some things we can't program a machine to know for sure.
So you're saying those sci-fi movies where the AI takes over, goes rogue, maybe we don't have to worry about that so much.
Well, I wouldn't go that far. But it definitely changes how you think about AI, for sure. Take code verification, for example. You want to make sure a self-driving car's software is solid, right? That it won't just decide to ignore a red light.
Yeah, that'd be bad.
Exactly. You'd want some kind of program that could scan the code and be like, yep, this is good to go. No bugs, no surprises.
Right, because who wants their car driving into a wall because of a software glitch?
Exactly. But the halting problem, it tells us that we can't have that kind of certainty. No matter how good we get at testing, there's always a chance, even a tiny one, that something unexpected happens and the program goes haywire.
So it's not about eliminating every single bug. It's more about, managing the risk, knowing that we can't control everything, even in the digital world.
Now you're getting it. It's about designing systems that are, resilient, that can adapt, that can handle the unexpected.
Okay, that makes sense for software. But what about other stuff? Does undecidability pop up anywhere else?
Oh, totally. Think about cryptography, for instance. Making those codes that are almost impossible to crack.
So the stuff that protects our online banking, our personal data, all that.
Exactly. Now imagine trying to prove that a code is totally unbreakable, that no supercomputer, no matter how powerful, could ever crack it.
Sounds like a tall order.
It is. And a lot of times that kind of proof, it relies on this idea of undecidability. We're basically using the limits of what we know we can't compute to keep our information safe.
Whoa, that's kind of mind-blowing. So we're not just talking about some abstract math puzzle here. Undecidability, it's connected to real-world stuff. Cybersecurity, national security, you name it.
It's like we've stumbled onto this fundamental truth about, like, the universe, you know?
Yeah.
There are just some things we can't know for sure, things we can't predict, no matter how advanced our technology gets.
It's both amazing and a little scary, don't you think? Like knowing that some things might always be beyond our understanding.
It definitely challenges how we think about knowledge, about certainty. But it also opens up new ways of seeing things, new possibilities.
Okay, now you've got me intrigued. What kind of possibilities are we talking about? It's like we're putting together this giant puzzle, right? And just when we think we're getting somewhere, we realize, wait a minute, there are pieces missing. Maybe even pieces that don't exist.
And maybe that's okay. You know, maybe that's where the beauty is, in the not knowing, in the mystery of it all.
So where does that leave us? If we can't predict everything perfectly, if there's always going to be some uncertainty, should we just throw in the towel? Just say, well, it's all random anyway, why even bother?
No way. If anything, it's the opposite. Knowing our limits, it's actually freeing. You know, it releases us from this idea that we have to control everything, that we need all the answers.
So it's more about, like, accepting what we don't know, being okay with a little ambiguity.
Exactly. It's about asking better questions, being open to different ways of seeing things, and having a bit of what they call epistemic humility.
Epistemic humility, I like that. It's like saying, hey, I might be wrong about some stuff. Who knows? I'm always down to learn something new.
You got it. And that's important for everyone, not just mathematicians, computer scientists. If you want to navigate this crazy, complex world, you got to be able to roll with it, you know?
Makes sense. So how do we actually, like, use this undecidability thing in our everyday lives? Not all of us are out here writing code or proving theorems.
Well, for starters, we got to remember that the ways we try to understand things, whether it's the economy, politics, whatever, even our own beliefs, they're all just models. And models are simplified. They're based on what we know right now, which is always changing.
So basically, don't believe everything you think. Be open to changing your mind.
Pretty much. But more than that, it's about being a little skeptical, you know? Questioning your assumptions, considering different points of view, being open to the possibility that, hey, maybe I'm not right about everything.
So undecidability is basically a call to be more, like, thoughtful, open-minded, have better conversations, really.
And less about being right all the time. You know, less dogmatic.
Which is good, because we are all about exploring different ideas here on the Deep Dive.
Yeah.
Even if they make our heads spin a little.
That's what it's all about.
Right.
Staying curious, asking those big questions, even if there isn't a clear answer. Because that's where the real fun is.
Totally. This deep dive into Wicho Sands' blog post, it's been a wild ride, right? We went from twin primes to the limits of knowledge and everything in between.
And we've just scratched the surface. Undecidability, it pops up everywhere. Physics, philosophy, even art. It's all connected.
So to wrap things up, we'll leave you with this. If there are limits to what we can know, if some questions might not have answers, what does that say about truth itself?
It's a good one to think about. Keep that in mind as you go about your day.
That's all the time we have for this deep dive. Until next time, stay curious and keep exploring those big questions.